Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here today and your testimony. Mr. Groves, I wanted to ask a couple questions on the legal issues and constitutional issues. Obviously, I was not in Paris. It sounds like you were, and many of the panelists were. In terms of the discussion that went on why this was not a treaty and an agreement or a promise, you know, it seems like so much of our foreign policy is premised on the rule of law, our democracy, constitutional democracy, how we do things in our country. And so when the question is asked by other countries or other entities, why is this not a treaty? And that's posed to this administration, what's the response? And what are the consequences of that?
Well, the response, and it's not like our delegation was shy about this in Paris. The response was, you know, we cannot get this through the Senate, and so that's why we're not going to treat it as a treaty. This didn't come out of the blue when White House spokesman Josh Earnest was asked about this in March of last year, about whether the Senate would be able to review the Paris Agreement. He said, well, I don't really think that the Senate, who's full of climate deniers, should have a say on making climate change policy. And when the host of the Paris conference, Laurent Fabius of France, the foreign minister, was asked about this, he said, well, no matter what we do, we can't have an agreement that would have to go to the U.S. Congress because it's not going to pass. So it was the biggest open secret in Paris that whatever they agreed to, it would have to be something that the U.S. would have to come back to the United States and not have to pass congressional muster with. So although the rest of the world will require and expect the United States to live up to its mitigation reduction commitments and live up to its financial commitments to send billions of dollars every year, the fact that it didn't have any type of congressional scrutiny, I think really speaks to the legitimacy of the agreement.
And in terms of the commitments and promises made in this non-binding agreement, tell me how that affects our domestic law and how is that binding on corporations here and whether there's compliance or non-compliance, and is there precedent for that?
Well, it's a clever thing that the White House did is you go and you make an international commitment in Paris, you bypass Congress completely, and then you go to enforce it domestically through EPA regulations. So there's a lack of democratic legitimacy on almost every level of the creation of this document and its enforcement. And these EPA regulations, like the Clean Power Plan, will be litigated. You know, Congress has passed resolutions disapproving of them. But of course, those EPA regulations will be binding on U.S. corporations.
Yeah. And Mr. Yulee, I would just, following up on that, it seems incongruent to me that we continually around the world talk about democracy and constitution and the system of government we have here, but we are doing this the opposite way here, and you know, and not going through the treaty process, which of course is cloaked with the legalities that are binding. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you want a durable climate change agreement, a durable climate change policy, you have to involve Congress. It's as simple as that. And this administration has chosen not to do that. And so the question is this a durable treaty, politically and legally? And I would venture to say that the answer is no.
Thank you. Those are all my questions, Mr. Chairman.